exactly right. We mustn't leave anyone by the wayside. So for the next three guests, first we'll turn over to Laurence Bottin. You're in charge of Senior Business Manager at Proparco for microfinancing. So tell us about Proparco. Proparco wants to have the broadest impact as possible. And you work with everyone, financiers, informal sector. So tell us a bit more about microfinance. Yes, so we must bear in mind that micro businesses and small businesses make up 70% of all businesses in Africa. So here we're talking about street vendors, taxi drivers, hair salons, farmers. These are companies that employ one or a few people, and they are often part of the informal economy. So the informal economy is very much part and parcel of African economies. It makes up 25 to 65% of GDP, depending on the country. Therefore, these business owners, micro-business owners, need to have access to financial services, quality financial services that are adapted to their needs. So what is a financial service? Loans, for example, insurance and saving. Unfortunately, traditional banks, they either don't provide these services or they provide these services poorly when it comes to micro enterprises. So therefore, these people have had to come up with alternatives to find access to these sorts of services. In Africa, we often hear of tontine, and that's a best-case scenario. But there are often informal money lenders with very shady practices, with aggressive interest rates. So in order to tackle that issue, to provide support to these business owners so that they can have quality financial services from the formal financial sector, microfinance has been a saving grace over these past few years. Laurence, thank you very much. We'll come back to you in a few seconds, but I would like to turn now to Rambert Nami, who is also here in our studio, executive at AB Bank in Zambia. Let's start by watching a short video that talks about AB Bank in Zambia.
90% of all the businesses in this country are small businesses. They are informal businesses. They are doers and makers. They are what in Zambia are called marketeers. 90% of all economical activity is done by such small clients.
Usually they would turn to informal money lenders who tend to have quite aggressive interest rates and also sometimes even unfair conditions.
They need capital in order for them to grow, and this is where AB Bank comes in to bridge that gap, to offer that financing to these clients.
Compared to the other banks, we're more flexible on the requirements such that any client, as long as they meet the criteria, will be able to get a facility from us.
So what we do is we create a methodology which allows them to have access to these things with their limited documentation, with their limited collaterals.
Every month we disburse 1,500 loans to the small entrepreneurs, small businesses, either new to AB Bank or existing customers.
We currently have 14,000 MSMEs. They're from various sectors: agriculture, transportation, trade, real estate. The most common MSMEs are dealing in trade, which forms about 40% of our portfolio, and real estate, which forms about 20% of our portfolio.
Alors, Rambert, ce qu'on perçoit très bien dans cet extrait, c'est que
Rambert, what we see in that short video is that microloans, it's also a responsibility. And it was actually quite surprising to hear that you were the only bank in Zambia to provide these sorts of loans to very small businesses. Well, yes, ABZ is quite a unique bank in Zambia because we're the only bank to really target micro enterprises. We don't fund any of the major projects like most of the other major banks in the country. What makes us unique is that we want to drive and create an impact. We want to have an impact on economic development, job creation, and we really want to improve living conditions. Generally speaking, throughout Zambia, it is still one of the poorest countries in Africa. So we reach out to micro enterprises, micro businesses who are often cut off from financial services and who don't have access to bank loans. So we've been speaking about microfinance, but ABZ is a bank. It's not a microfinance institute like it may appear. ABZ, compared to other MFIs, we provide medium-sized loans around $900 on average, whereas a microfinance institute would be more around $300. ABZ also, we provide considerable loans if needed to SMEs, $15,000 for more structured businesses. And we also provide a much larger range of services as a bank than IMFs. Sorry, MFIs. We provide payment services, savings, other forms of loans. And also we provide mobile banking services, but I'm sure we'll talk about that in a few moments. Well, now I know we say ABZ, so I'll try and use that terminology. Last 2019, Proparco took a stake in ABZ, 1.8 million euros. Can you tell us why that is? Yes, exactly right. In 2019, we became a shareholder by investing 1.8 million euros in the bank. And just as Rambert said, ABZ is the only bank in Zambia that targets that customer base, micro enterprises. So the way it does that is through quite a unique methodology, which is very adapted to these types of people, because these could be considered as risky customers. So given that lending agencies, they don't have access to your usual financial reports, your P&L account. So what happens is we have staff who go out into the field, they look at the way the business operates, they get in touch with customers and suppliers, and they try and estimate how serious a business it is. And then they can use that to assess the size of the loan that is best adapted to the business. Now, it could be for the business to be able to buy farming equipment, or it could, if it's a office supplies shop, they may need to buy stock. As Rambert said, on average, the ABZ loan is around $900. So obviously, Proparco can't be directly involved with these small businesses. And that's why we do it indirectly. That's why we do it via people for whom it is their core business. And that's why we invested in ABZ in 2019. But on top of that, it's because we want to bring something more to the table, our extra financial support. And for that reason, we appointed Mr. Nami here as bank executive. The reason for that is because he's an expert when it comes to digital finance, and that's what the bank really needed. Again, in this same vein of providing additional support, extra financial support, we also provide support in developing a very specific saving solution for people living in rural areas. Again, we hear this time and time again, extra financial support. Fantastic to hear it again. It's all about meaning. Rambert, for a number of people living in rural, very isolated areas, remote areas, going to a bank is often impossible. But people need to have access to a bank, and through that you do it with phones. So is mobile banking, digital finance, something that's really on the up?
Yes, it's called mobile money, because these services are mostly about money transfer. Well, let me tell you the story. It all started with a small experiment in Kenya in 2006. An attempt was made to transfer money between two cell phones. At the moment, there's over 500 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone that currently have a mobile money account. So it's a real revolution. And why was it successful? First of all, because very few people in Africa have banking or had banking privileges. So you need means of payment to be available. And when you make all of these cash transactions, things can get complicated, particularly when you have to make the trip to make a payment. And the other reason why this was successful is that it's so simple. All you need is a cell phone. While in most countries, you also need to present ID because there are regulatory constraints, obviously. But this money transfer service relies on officers. And the customer goes to see the officer and they can make cash deposits and cash withdrawals. And it's very simple. And now the strength of this service is such that a whole network of officers have been deployed. Some 4 million officers across sub-Saharan Africa. To give you a ballpark figure, this is equivalent to the number of ATMs across the world. So everybody in Africa, it doesn't matter where you live, nearby you will find an officer with whom you can access your funds. It's absolutely key. So many transactions are cash-based. It's important to be able to access this cash. So initially, this was a transfer service, and gradually it's shifting and turning into a banking service. So there is talk of mobile banking, and this would include saving solutions, loans, so as to promote financial inclusion and bring financial inclusion to the whole transformation. So ABZ is pursuing such activity in Zambia and recently launched a mobile banking service, and the goal being to reach out to people who live in remote areas and they rely on a network of officers, 40,000 already. Well, they've got partnership agreements with a number of companies, and the goal is to sign over 1 million mobile banking customers. At the moment, ABZ has just 100,000, all segments combined. So the goal is to sign more than 1 billion by the next 2 years. It's a very ambitious project. Proparco recently took part in the project, providing technical assistance to help structure the project. It's complicated in terms of security and regulatory compliance and marketing. So you also need to make a name for yourself. So a lovely goal for ABZ. Thank you very much. This is enough to make you dizzy. The growth figures that we're hearing, let's listen to those customers.
I'm the director for Ashton Pharmaceuticals. I'm a pharmacy technologist. I did pharmacy at Horn College. I worked for an Indian company for 8 years. Then later on, I decided to start my own. It's a distribution company of pharmaceutical products, but we've got also retail pharmacies. Mostly, we've been supplying to government hospitals and clinics throughout Zambia. And we also supply retail pharmacies dotted throughout the country. To start and try to find a share of the market in the industry, it was tricky. There was need for us to get a loan. So we approached other banks, these traditional banks, big banks. We never got the attention that we needed. Maybe because they thought we were too small for them, until somebody recommended AB Bank. And within a week or so, we were given a loan, which we started with about 200,000, which helped us to restock. Within a year, we were able to repay the loan. And then we got another loan, about 800,000, which helps us to open another branch. And then from there, we've been interacting with AB Bank. They've been helping us a lot. Every time we've got challenges in terms of cash flow, we would go for advice. If we need some money, they would also help us in that direction.
It was difficult to go to any bank to go and get a loan because you are not in employment. I heard about the AB Bank through my neighbor, who's also a farmer, and he approached me to say, do you know that the AB Bank have introduced the loans for the farmers? I said, oh, yeah, I would love to, because I had a challenge of water and I wanted to buy the pump, I wanted to buy the tank, and I wanted to do a lot of things, but because of water. And I went for it. Without the help of AB Bank, believe it or not, I was not going to manage.
Rembert, earlier you said that 80% of Africans have smartphones but no banking privileges. Let's leave Zambia. Let's go to South Africa. Jumbo was created to provide loans to micro-entrepreneurs without banking privileges, using mobile banking. Let's hear from both of them.
More especially wakazi, more especially my young ladies, kutenga drama because wazafuna my requirements or collateral.
I ran my own business, construction. I went to that same bank that I banked with for so long, for so many years. They refused to give me the loan. They said, no, we cannot give you the loan because you are self-employed.
First yanga na sova loan was 20 kwacha. Pa first now da masoksi ya chimuna paka napeza profit ya chita inglizi na bwana chita decide kugula masketi ya chikazi.
There was a time we were working, no money for tile cement. So I got in a silver loan, I bought the tile cement and we went to finish the the work.
Un très beau témoignage sur l'essor que peuvent prendre des micro-entrepreneurs grâce à Jumo et
testimonial how micro-entrepreneurs can increase their business thanks to Jumo, not Jumbo, obviously, not Dumbo either. That was the elephant in the room, obviously, but you understood that. Rambert, to tie in with everything we have been saying, has the COVID crisis fast-tracked this change? What about your business? Well, fortunately, the impact of COVID on the population in Zambia has been limited, but the economy is extremely fragile, and so the impact of the lockdown has been tough, and the bank did suffer. Customers prefer to save rather than request loans under the circumstances. This being said, the bank has made changes to branches, to limit travel, to reduce opening hours and manning strength. It's very important to find ways to save customers a trip. Well, usually they go to the bank once a month to pay back their monthly installment, to pay back their loan. And by using mobile money services, as we said before, there are 5 million customers who already have a mobile money account in Zambia at the moment, and they were able to use their cell phone from home and make those payments. This is something the bank initiated in 2019 before the COVID crisis. And this initiative was off to a good start. 20 to 30% of repayments were already being made remotely in 2019. And in 2020, because of COVID, that number trebled. And the number of repayments made digitally trebled. Because now 70% of repayments are being made directly via a mobile, and this means a lot of transformations for the bank. At the end of the day, the current network model, which is based on a highly localized presence of banking branches, may be spread further throughout the country using a lighter weight model in terms of local presence. So yes, this is fast-tracking. Philippe Guichandu from the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation is with us as well. Hello, kind sir. As part of Choose Africa, you currently benefit from securities and guarantees provided by Proparco. Please explain what you do. Allow me to start by introducing the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation, which was created in 2008 by the Crédit Agricole Group and the Grameen Trust in Bangladesh. The Grameen Trust organization received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006 alongside Professor Mohamed Yunus, who is known as the father of microfinance. So the foundation was created to support microfinance institutions and social enterprises with a view to fighting financial exclusion, banking exclusion, but also to promote entrepreneurship and, as we said before, more specifically female entrepreneurship. We currently operate in 37 countries, most of them in Africa. This is an important thrust of our growth. We work with 77 microfinance institutions, not necessarily banks. Many of them are NGOs, cooperative groups, non-banking financial institutions, and they will serve the needs of micro-entrepreneurs, as Laurence explained. All of these are small entrepreneurs who work in the informal economy. We have 7 million beneficiaries, or rather our partners have 7 million beneficiaries, including 73% women, which is a much higher figure than what we heard earlier. And this jumps to 85% in rural areas. So this reflects the two cultures of our two founders, the Crédit Agricole Group, which has a strong footprint in rural areas and in terms of funding and financing agriculture, and the Grameen Bank, which has always funded mostly women using very, very small micro loans. Let's get back to digital for a minute and the role that the digital transformation plays in the financial sector, particularly in Africa. Do you agree with Rambert's enthusiasm on this front? Not entirely. One thing is sure, financial inclusion, particularly in Africa, is taking place and will take place thanks to digital growth. That's certain, and we are supporting our partners as they embrace the digital transformation. And I forgot to clarify that our partners are medium-sized institutions and they manage portfolios under $100 million. Now, for these small institutions, the digital transformation is a big thing. It requires thinking about strategy. And this is something we said before. This requires financial investments, which aren't always possible. This requires supporting the company's human resources so that they too can support their own customers as these customers embrace the digital transformation. So it's sort of a mini revolution, and not everybody is capable of doing that, or it may be difficult for a lot of them. Also, what we're seeing is the emergence of Fintech. This is a new type of institutions, and they provide a wide raft of credits, access to loans in particular, and we need to be extremely cautious here. And this is where I may be a little more critical, particularly when it comes to Kenya, which has been quoted as a pioneer in digital transformation. What you need to know, and I checked the figures before I came here, in 2020, 6% of the adult population, we're talking nearly 3.2 million people, are over-indebted because they took out loans ranging from $1.5 and $50 with interest rates that can go up to 350% per year via these structures or entities. So as you can see, we need regulation. That's something we need to state. And there are real questions about how the sector can be regulated. And also the populations need financial education. That is so important. We realized that most people did not understand what were the terms of the loan. And now they find themselves blacklisted simply because they may have borrowed $2 or $5. So as you can see, abuses do happen, even though we do provide a lot of support to our customers to make sure those abuses don't happen. So it's a real challenge, making sure that these technological advances will benefit everybody, first and foremost the customers. Now, getting back to your activities, and as a substrate to what you said earlier, as we know, you are rolling out Proparco's financing solutions in Africa. Maybe the support you receive, you propose, isn't just financial.
So it's actually fantastic to have the support from AFD, who helped us get to the levels where we are now, so we can work with our partners to provide all forms of support, most in particular thanks to subsidies that we get from the AFD group. And thanks to that, we can help build institutional performance by providing them with training, by helping them set up committees where they get to think about new products and the like. And really, thanks to that, we have been able to kick off one program, what we call the Facilité Africaine, which is the African facility. We've been able to use that to really support assistance to the smaller institutions. We also signed off an agreement with Proparco for micro-insurance. So through micro-insurance, it means that these institutions that we work with no longer provide just loans or savings solutions, but they can also provide insurance. What we saw with COVID-19 was that a lot of these institutions, when it came to providing microinsurance for health, it was important because they were operating in countries where the social security system or private insurance systems didn't really work or exist. So they provide this sort of insurance, new services to these people. But for that, you need to train them. You also need to think about how it's going to be packaged together in a product. And for that, we require subsidies, support from expert advisors to really help that. We've been working with the International Labour Organization, ILO, on that. Also, we have been working with Crédit Agricole for Banquiers Solidaires, so United Bankers, to help us really work and provide support to people in the field. Philippe, thank you very much for that. Maybe to wrap up this session, we'll turn back to Lawrence. Beyond microloans, we have to focus on responsible microloans. Is that really essential? Yes, it is. Vincent, Philip, they spoke about it just a second ago. When we work with micro-enterprises, very small businesses, we are often dealing with people who are quite at risk, certainly compared to business owners who are well established. So Proparco is there working with institutions, and they only work with institutions that deal with their customers in a proper, respectful way, that they aren't going to burden them with debt. And this is what Philippe was saying, and this means that they are constantly communicating with them, they are providing information on interest rates, on commissions, on fees, on hidden costs and the like. And also, these fees can't be too cumbersome and anything that would have a negative impact on customers or employees. And we look at that when we evaluate and assess the institutions that we're going to work with. To do that, we actually use industry standard tools to assess these micro-institutions, and thanks to that, we can ensure that this institution is respectful of the base rules when it comes to consumer protection. Fantastic. Well, again, it's been an ongoing theme, global analysis, local examples. So here we have another example, the SA Taxi platform. And this is a perfect example of the expression, alone you can go fast, but together you can go far. And this is a system that provides support to taxi drivers with a whole range of services. Let's have a look.
It was hard when I started this business. You have to pay the driver a full payment, and then you have to pay the installment. You have to service the car. You need money to take your children to school and food and everything. Commercial banks, when you don't have money, they don't finance you. SA Taxi, it was easy for me to buy vehicles. COVID and lockdown, when it started, the ranks, there are no people, there's no business. During COVID, SA Taxi, they gave us a relief of installments. SA Taxi provides us with sanitizers.
Voilà, c'était une illustration très concrète du fait que il est possible de ne laisser personne au bord.
Another very tangible example of how we mustn't leave anyone by the wayside, even if it's in a taxi. Laurent, any comments? Yes, SA Taxi. It's a company based in South Africa, funded by Proparco. And SA Taxi provides funding to taxi drivers. It's a collective. And these are minibus drivers that can carry up to 15 people, and they're really quite popular throughout the towns and cities, townships throughout Africa, South Africa. So beyond funding, SA Taxi also provides an overall platform, a whole range of services to its customers. And they see their customers really like business owners. So SA Taxi provides insurance. They also provide maintenance and repair services. They also act as a dealership, so they sell spare parts and even whole vehicles. And I think it's really important that we highlight the fact that SA Taxi works in very much a constructive way. They work with their customers, and they did that throughout the crisis. They put a hold on debt reimbursements and monthly installments, and also they had assistance from Proparco and other money lenders who put SA Taxi's monthly installments on hold. So this brings us to the fact that this has been a really interesting session on microfinance, but we've also had a lot of questions. We have one here. Obviously, we can't take all of the questions because there have been so many and we have limited time. This is from Mrs. Kouassi. She has a hair salon in Abidjan. And I'll ask this of you, Laurence. She says, so I understand that microcredits, they're small loans. I have a hair salon with 2 employees. I want to increase my business. Is there a microfinance institution out there who will happily lend me enough money to be able to buy the shop space next door? What can we answer? Great question. So we spoke often about farming, about office supplies shops, but microloans and microcredits can also help people buy water pumps, as what we heard in that video about Zambia. So really, these microloans, they can help people invest. And imagine in the case that was given, so this person will go in and speak to a credit or loan advisor working in a microfinance institution based in Abidjan. That person will then see how the business runs, see what the overall business plan is, what their income overheads are. And with that, the advisor will be able to assess the profitability of the project. If it is profitable, and if the lady will be able to pay back her loan, then yes, I don't see why she wouldn't be able to have access to a microcredit. Well, I think that's quite encouraging for Mrs. Kwasi and all others interested in microloans. Obviously, there were so many questions we couldn't answer all of them today because we had so much to cover today. But we have all of our experts who will happily answer them in the near future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for our last roundtable discussion. This brings us to the end of our show. So let's finish off just as we started.